Today on Reese Dixon, I made this bedside table. I made it! Hi everybody, it's Teresa with ReeseDixon.com, and today I am building the bedside table of my dreams. As part of our master bedroom makeover, I am going to make myself the side table that I have always wanted, which is part bedside table, part bookshelf. So I'm never again going to run out of space for my books. Addie's not gonna get to crawl up, and he loves to eat my books, play with them like they're building blocks. No more. Now it's just for me, and I can't wait. So let me walk you through the pieces I've got here. This is going to be the main top of my bedside table. It's a piece of 1/2-inch plywood that I had the store cut to 24 inches square. And then I cut the corners out about 2 inches square, but I'll show you how to get that later. This is a piece of 1x8, and it is 24 inches long, and that's going to be the top of my bookshelf. So it'll fit just like that. And then I have to have the legs. So these two pieces are for the front two legs. These are 30 inches long. And then these two are for the back legs, and they're also going to extend high enough to be the back of my bookshelf as well. So these are 42 inches long. Then I need the front two pieces to hold up my bookshelf. That's these two pieces. They're 12 inches. And then I need what's called the apron piece, which is the pieces that go underneath the main table to kind of support it all and to attach the legs to. And these are 4 2x4s that are each 24 inches long. And then I just need some braces. Since my legs are so tall, they need a little bit extra support, or they'll be like a little giraffe, you know? So that's these back pieces, and those are each 24 inches long. I've got 3 of those. So not too many pieces to worry about. I mean, it might seem like a lot right now, but as we start to attach things, it'll all make sense to you. So I'm going to be painting this, but I want to hide all my screws. So I'm using a countersink drill bit. You can buy these really cheaply at the store. And what this does is, instead of just drilling a hole this big, once you get back here, it drills a hole this big. This part's a blade as well. And it makes it so that without making the entire hole huge, it drills so that the head of the screw can be down into the wood. So then you can cover it up with wood filler and nobody has to look at all these ugly screws. So this will help me to make this whole thing look beautiful. The first pieces we're going to attach are the front legs to the front apron piece. So what I've done so far is, of course, make all of my cuts, and then I went after these pieces with a sander and a vengeance. Like, I was angry at them. 2x4s in particular, the wood that I bought is so cheap that it really wasn't in great condition. So you can spend more money and get a piece of wood that doesn't need as much labor, or you can save your money and put a little more labor into it. It's, you know, that's the trade-off. So I cheaped out on the lumber, which means I got to work a little bit harder to make it look good. So I sanded the life out of these. So what you are looking at right now is what's going to be the very front of my end table. So I picked all the pieces with the best looking sides. So I'm going to line my leg up right with that apron piece, and then drill straight through both so that I can have a place to put my screw right into the sides. And I'm going to do that with both legs. So this is the piece that we have assembled now, the 2 legs onto the front apron piece. So now I've got the 2 side apron pieces lined up. I've already drilled my pilot hole, so now I'm just gonna screw these through here to make the 3 sides of our apron. So this next part is a little bit tricky. We're going to attach the long legs, but they line up with the bottom legs, of course, but they extend past where the top of the table will be. So we can't install them the same way that we installed the first legs by just putting them on the ground upside down. We have to lay them like this, match the bottom end up with the bottom leg. Okay, so it's going to take a little bit of measuring, and you'll want to have a level handy and make sure that these legs match in height before you screw those in. So that will leave you with this foot-long overhang where we're going to be installing our bookshelf. So once you get everything measured correctly and make sure that you are matched up, then drill your pilot holes and screw through these just like you did before. I went ahead and added that back apron piece while I was at work, and so now you can see our table's taken place. Now we could put the tabletop on at this point, but since I'm adding this bookshelf level, I need to take into account how I'm going to get the front supports on. If I put the tabletop on first, then there's be no way to screw them in because these aprons would be blocking it. So we have to do that before we assemble the top. So here's the plywood piece with these notches cut out. These notches will fit where these legs are. So when I cut these, I just cut these out with my saw, like as I was cutting everything else. And because the wood is not always exactly the measurement specified, I actually just held the piece and traced it, and then cut it out to the size of this piece so that it would fit exactly. This is the 1x8 that becomes the top of our bookshelf. So this is what we're going to want to line the front support pieces up with. So I'm going to line up the tops of these, and I've already used a little pen to mark where they are on here, and then I'll be able to line my support beams up with the side of this and that line where I marked it where it's going to meet that shelf, and then I can screw up from the bottom to install them. This is all going to be covered up, so you don't need to worry about drilling down to cover up that head. You just need to do the pilot hole for this step and screw those in good and tight. So here's my top piece with these supports on. And once I screwed it in and put it in place, I made a very important discovery. When I planned for these to be 12 inches, I did not take into account the width of this plywood. So once I screwed it in, this part was 12 inches, this part was 12.5 inches, which would not make a very functional bookshelf. So I had to take it back to the saw and cut off 1/2 inch, and now I'm sanding to make sure that they're level before I put the bookshelf on top. So you can see here, I've got a little ways to go before they're level. So you just want to pull your level out and check it against each other. And right now they're all good except for this last one. So I've got a little more sanding to do on that one. But I wanted to show you, while I had a little more light, I wanted to show you the next step. So once I get these screwed on, I'm ready to attach the top to the apron. So I've got these screws here. These are 3/4 inch screws, as opposed to the 2.5 inch screws I was using when I've got the 2x4s to get through. So these ones are short enough that they'll just get through the plywood and then into the apron. So I can drill my holes, countersink them, fill them with the screws, and all the way around the top, including between these two posts. Once I get that installed, I'm going to take my top bookshelf piece, if my supports were level, of course, or I should say after they'll be level, and then back to the longer screws. Since I've got to go back into this longer piece here, I'm going to screw these into the posts. Then there's just one last step, and because I'm making mine so tall, because I made my bed frame so tall, it's a little bit like a giraffe. It's kind of wobbly. So I've got these pieces here, which are cut to the same width as the apron pieces, so they'll fit right in between. Well, There you go. See, it'll be a really tight fit. I'll have to, when I have two hands, it'll work. And so I put two on these sides like this, and one in the back like this. And same deal, pilot hole, countersink, and then screw those into place with the long 2.5-inch screws so that this whole piece will be super stable and strong, and I can put all of my books on it and it won't go anywhere. So once that's done, that's it for the assembly. So I've got a few more screws to do, and then I'm going to go back with the sander and get rid of any more rough edges, any spots where my cuts didn't quite line up, any spots where it's still a little rough. I'm definitely going to sand these countersink holes, and once I'm done with that, I can pull out my wood filler. This is my best friend because since I don't woodwork every day, I'm not great at it. My cuts aren't always straight. I'm cheap, so I don't always use expensive wood, which means there are knots to cover up. This basically will cover up all of your sins, and including filling up those countersink holes so that once it's dry, you can sand it and then paint right over it. So this will help you, and you only want to use this if you're going to paint over it because it's definitely noticeable that it's not wood. So right now I'm going to go finish my assembly and then sand it again to get rid of all the roughness that I can, and whatever roughness I can't get rid of, I'm going to cover with the wood filler. I'll let this dry overnight, and then we'll be ready to get a coat of paint and finish this thing up to look beautiful. This was the step that I took the most time with, and it really pays off. I took a couple of days and did about 3 different coats with the wood filler, and that's what makes all the difference. That's what takes this from just some cheap lumber to an actual piece of furniture. Once you get a coat of paint on this, you'll be amazed at how great it looks if you take the time to properly prep for that paint, which means really thorough sanding and really thorough wood filler. This is especially true on this plywood top. I could have sanded forever and ever and ever and never have gotten as smooth a finish as I can with a little judicious application of the wood filler. And now it's got this nice smooth surface despite being a really cheap piece of lumber. So now that, oh, one more thing I wanted to talk about, the sanding. This is another area where you can really take it from just looking like a bunch of cheap scrap wood and into an actual piece of furniture. And one way I did that was to get this kind of custom finish on the edges. I just took my sander and smoothed those edges so that it kind of rounded the corner just a tiny bit. It is the tiniest of details, but those are the kind of things that will really make a difference when you're working with wood and building furniture. So now we are ready for paint, and I like to use spray paint because that way you can get a really good coverage without any brush strokes. So I'm going to start by doing a primer coat. Anytime you work with raw wood, you want to prime it so that none of the moisture changes can have an effect on your paint job, nothing can seep through. It'll just protect the look of everything with a little primer, and your paint will wear better longer too. And then I have these 2 different colors of gray and one of black, and I'm just going to kind of layer them to make kind of a mottled effect so that I get something that's not flat, it's got some depth to it. This one is a flat black and these 2 are glossy, so I'm gonna have to take that into account. I'll do any of my black coats first and then finish it up with the glossy because you don't want to have those 2 different treatments conflicting. This will just kind of give it depth, and then I'll finish with the gloss at the end. I really took my time getting the finish the way that I wanted it, and I'm so glad that I did, because now that it's in place, I am just so in love with it. I'm so in love with how the books look there next to my bed by the fact that Addie can't attack them any longer, and I just love how simple and yet how elegant it looks in the space and how functional it is. This was a really rewarding project. You know, whenever I do woodworking or building anything that's kind of out of my comfort zone, about halfway through, I always hate everything I'm doing, wonder why I ever tried it, want to just rip it apart and throw it in the trash and never look at wood again. And then once it's finished and in place, I'm amazed at what I did. This is just directly out of my head and into my bedroom, and I'm thrilled about it. I hope that this was inspiring to you, to show you that you can accomplish these things too. And if you have any questions, just leave me a comment and I'll help you out. Subscribe to the channel so that you can see this whole master bedroom once it's all done, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.